So good morning, everyone, to this one additional great event of this TOPPENMORGON. And today with a very exciting topic, 5G, time to get real, with member companies of Mobile Heights, Telia and Cybercom, who will be the speakers today. And of course, the rollout of 5G is full steam ahead in many parts of the world. But does the new generation of cellular radio technology live up to its promise? Which use cases unlocked by the power of 5G are already in play, and how do they make our lives better? That's questions that will be answered today. So warm welcome. But before letting the screen to our speakers of today, I want to go through a bit of the technical details of this webinar. We would like you to use the chat to actually write who you are and from which companies that you are coming, as a bit of like a name badge, so we know who's here. And if you want, you can, share your contacts or whatever there. You could use, and we urge you to use this chat as well during the webinar for comments, questions, dialogue with us or with each other. So use that to tell us who you are and from which companies or organizations you are coming from. And, that's the way we can interact in these webinars. So warm welcome. And with this said, a little bit about today's agenda. So we will start up setting the frames with Johan Lindén from Mobile Heights, and we will then obviously have our member companies, Telia Company and Cybercom, to talk a little bit about 5Gs, what's the buzz about 5Gs, and of course, how do we make it happen? And afterwards, we will have a Q&A all together, and obviously use the chat again to whenever just ask and comment on whatever you want, and we will hopefully have time to answer all your questions. So with this said, I want to leave the word to the host of today, Johan Lindén from Mobile Heights. You're the senior project manager, and you will first of all tell us a little bit what's going on at the Mobile Heights, but obviously set the frames for today's subject. So welcome, Johan.
Thank you, Jasmine, for the nice presentation of me. Yes, I'm Johan Lindén and project manager at Mobile Heights. I would like to introduce you to the 5G and what's happening in Skåne. But first, I would like to give a short welcome to our new members. That makes us now 130 members within the Mobile Heights organization. So we have a talent embassy. We have cross workers, we have Nexo, QCM, Meta Solutions, Pro, and Milvus. Thank you all to Mobile Heights and welcome very much. Now I would like to talk a little about what the start. Now finally we have the 5G starts up in Sweden. With the auction that has been held. But what does it actually mean? I mean, Telia will tell more about what's about 5G and in more detail. But I can tell you, I can spoil some words in two meanings. And that is, well, if you combine the different kind of technologies, then you understand it's not about downloading a movie as fast as possible on a mobile phone. It's a technology shift. What I can see is that we have technologies in areas for AI, for example. We have the cloud solutions, we have the IT infrastructure, and combine that with the technology of slicing in 5G and other functions within the 5G. You will improve the mobility area, for example, autonomous drive, autonomous factories, and so on. So I would like to say that it's not only about mobile phones, it's a lot more. It will change the business opportunities and how do you set up new use cases. I will, in next slide, tell a little more about what happens within in more national-wide. I mean, Invest in Skåne has, together with other regions, initiated a landscape mapping of the Swedish business opportunities within the 5G. And we have, the focus has been on 4 different areas. We have the connected vehicles, we have the smart transport system, Industry 4.0 and automation, and smart health. The idea is to build the ecosystem around those areas within the 5G setup. So when we add the 5G, which is very strong, we have, as you know, we have Ericsson that is the front leader of the 5G, but we have a lot of other companies around that working with the 5G. So we are really, really strong in the competence within this area. And we need to visualize the great investment opportunities we have in Sweden. So that is what we believe will be a lot of work. What we also think is that, what we don't know is what is the use cases that will grow the business. Later on, we will have both Cybercom and Telia will talk about use cases and what they believe in what's going to happen. But we are in just the beginning of the journey. So stay tuned and follow Mobile Heights channels. I mean, we will give you more information about the landscape mapping that will come up in a coming event. So Martin and also Martin Backlund. Martin Backlund is very interested of your questions. So if you have any, so please contact him. And thank you for me.
Thank you, Johan. And you will be back for and asking some questions to our speakers as well, and have be part of the discussions we will have later to get all the answers that you need as well. So thank you for hosting this really interesting event. And it's really great. I have to say that this check-in in the chat is really great, because I can just see how people are actually using that. And it feels really like you are actually here. It feels good when you are just looking into a camera and not getting any response. I can see in the chat that you are actually live and kicking out there. So warm welcome. And with this said, we will just dig into the subject. So welcome, please welcome Terese Hellenros, Customer Innovation Manager, and Ivan Bretan, Director of 5G for Industry 4.0 at Telia Global Businesses, talking about what's the buzz about 5Gs and giving us a little bit of user cases. So welcome to the screen.
Thank you. And I think, yes.
Nu blir Sveriges bästa nät 5G. Från Luleå i norr till Malmö i söder. Välkommen till Telia.
Thank you so much, Mobile Heights, for inviting us. And I hope you have a cup of coffee and sitting down in the couch, actually, and enjoying yourself, because we're going to talk a little bit more about what is the buzz about 5G. So my name is Terese Hellenros, and I've come from the IT industry. I've been in the IT industry actually since 2000, and now in Telia I've been for 4 years. And Ivan, he has worked a lot about 5G, I think since 2016, actually, and we both work with innovation projects at Telia. I work in Sweden mostly, and Ivan work in the global area, so with all our countries like Nordic and Baltics. So let's start, and hopefully you will learn something about 5G that you didn't know before, we hope. So next slide, please. Well, I just love this picture, because this picture actually tells us the purpose of technology. So what is the purpose of technology? We at Telia have a purpose as well, and we say that it's reinvent better connected living. What does that actually mean? Reinvent better connected living. Well, for me at least, it means that we use technology to have a better life, a better sustainable and a better society, more or less. So let's look at this picture. You have on the bottom, you have the blue parts, where actually is the network infrastructure, our ground and our basic. And then we have the orange layer. I don't know if you have the same colors as me, but still it's orange, which is the application and the data layer. And then on top, of course, you have the customer view, the value that they bring to the customer, the purple layer, where the services are, shown to the public and the society. And we want to be in all of this. We want to be in the entire chain with our partners, of course. We don't want to just be a network supplier. So, but first, I think we should look a little bit more about the background and the history of 5G, because it didn't really start here, did it, Ivan? And next slide.
Thank you, Terese. No, it certainly didn't. Mobile telephony has been around for quite some time now, and if we look briefly back through history, we can see that every 10th year or so, there is a new generation, a so-called generation of mobile telecommunications technology coming out on the market. And as you can see on this slide, where the generations are represented by devices, and of course, devices are only the endpoints of the mobile telecommunications technology. The network is, of course, the sort of main part. But devices were big to begin with. They shrank, became smaller, and then they got bigger again and more capable, more data capable, most importantly. And most of these devices on this slide are consumer devices, and you probably have used some of these, and I think even some of you might have worked with developing some of these from Sony. But for 5G, I chose a non-consumer device to represent what 5G is all about, and that is a mobile router, an industrial router, which is supposed to be used together with robotics, machinery, vehicles, so basically connecting other stuff than just people, with high speeds and short response times. We'll come back to those capabilities. And just as a sort of teaser for the next Mobile Heights seminar in a few years or so, where we will be talking about 6G, then we will see completely new types of devices like glasses and watches with embedded connectivity. You can take the next slide. So, and if we click once more, we will see the capabilities of 5G. So we prefer at Telia not to speak about all the technical parameters of 5G. We rather would like to highlight the new experience that we provide to businesses and consumers, which is dramatically, fundamentally different from previous generations. And as you can see from these 6 different dimensions, and I'm sure most of you have heard that 5G is faster, and it is. It's significantly faster. You have gigabit speeds, all the way up to 20 gigabits, but that's extreme speeds. But let's say 1 gigabit is something you can reasonably expect from 5G. Capacity, and that means basically you're going to have more devices on a given piece of geographical area. So if in 4G you could have 100,000 devices, you can have 1 million devices on the same area in 5G. Real time is all about response times. So 1 to 10 milliseconds of response times, ping times as the gamers call it. That's really important for machinery, for robotics, for vehicles. Not so important for people because we are kind of slow. But again, 5G is a lot about connecting other stuff than people. Reliability is very important, especially for enterprises, industry, manufacturing. And 5 nines of availability, uptime, is a very high requirement, a very demanding requirement. I'll come back to that in a minute. And energy efficiency is built into the 5G standards. So we won't be able to decrease the energy use because the data used is exploding. But we can actually keep the energy levels, the energy usage on the same level as in 4G by new technology and new energy efficiency in the network. And finally, quality and security, especially quality. That is a keyword for 5G, and that is something where we accomplish through the concept of network slicing, which is basically about virtual networks within the physical network, where we can give different quality parameters to different types of traffic. So for instance, an emergency type of application can have higher priority than just ordinary Netflix browsing. But let me just show this picture to illustrate how demanding 5 nines of uptime is. On a yearly basis, it's only 5 minutes and 15 seconds that the network can be down, for instance, for a manufacturing industry. So that is something which only is possible with 5G compared to previous generations of technology. Let's move on to the next slide.
In the future of smart transportation, connectivity, and in particular 5G, will play a fundamental role for automated mobility in terms of driverless, remotely controlled and automated vehicles, but also in terms of smart, efficient and sustainable transport solutions.
And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, getting ready to hop on a 5G connected, remote monitored, self-driving vehicle.
Telia's role in this project is to provide the connectivity that allows these the transportation, the bus, the car, whatever it becomes in the end, to have all the connectivity to the remote control center, which is the brain power that will operate these vehicles in the future.
Yes, this is a use case, the 5G ride that you saw in the movie. This movie was actually taken in September, so you see it's a little bit different weather than we have today. It's so rainy today, it's not a good spring weather. This project is active, and I'm the project lead or the project manager from Telia's perspective, but we have a lot of partners in this, as you saw in the movie, with Keolis and Ericsson, T Engineering, Urban ICT and so forth. But okay, so the long-term goal, why do we actually do this kind of projects? Well, for this project at least, it's to have a better, a safer and sustainable public transportation solutions. More the seamless journey from the moment you walk, out the door to the moment you come to your destination. And we want this to be able to kind of be in the future a more or less, just an incredible experience. And with this solution, we had high resolution cameras on top of the car and also around the car, where we had a video stream, where there was some processing actually in the car, and the video stream was sent by the 5G network to the control tower of Ericsson, where we did a lot of the kind of surveillance and stuff like that. So this is one case, and I will talk a little bit about another case, and this is actually the industry application case. So next slide, please. So the 5G ride, we use the public network. In this case, we have worked together with Boliden and also actually Lundin Mining. This is more another kind of case when it comes to networking. We're looking at the private dedicated network. Ivan will talk a little bit more about this. But I think one thing is really cool, because this is actually the first underground 5G network in the world. And that's kind of something to be proud of. So this mine, the Krankberggruvan, is in Skellefteåfältet in Västerbotten. And it's the kind of the modern and most safest mining in the world. So they started in the 60s, and it's actually really active nowadays. So what about, having kind of connection above ground is one thing, but 400 meters underground, and just, just to have a normal phone call, but we did so much more in this case. I mean, the use case, it's just about smart ventilation, for instance, ventilation is quite important when you're down in a mine, but also the remote controlling of the actually wheel loader. So you can sit upstairs in an office and just control the wheel loader down in the mine. So that's really awesome. I mean, for safety reasons, it's really great. So, but after, for instance, a blasting, the production goes a little bit down because it's a lot of gas and stuff in the mine. So before they needed to wait a couple of hours just to be going down to the mine. But nowadays with 5G, they can just continue the work. So that's really great. So productivity has actually increased also for the company. Ivan talked a little about the rescue purpose and the positioning system, the possibility to position both vehicles but also humans. So if something happens, we know exactly where people are and where the actual vehicles are as well. So that's really, in a rescue purpose, it's really important. So the last thing we did also is an IoT perspective. It's something called rock bolts, which is kind of something you put in the mine, and it feels the seismic movements, and it's connected to the kind of surveillance of the solution as well. So it's a lot of benefits you can see by doing this kind of dedicated networks. And but I want Ivan to talk a little bit where are we right now when it comes to the deployment of 5G?
Yes, because finally we have started to build 5G. As Terese mentioned, I've been working with this for 5 years, and it has been a bit frustrating to not see 5G being launched. Finland was ahead of Sweden, for instance, but now we're live because we had auctions in Sweden in January, and all the operators, the usual 4 suspects, have now 5G spectrum. And are building networks, 5G networks across Sweden. And we have also deployed 5G in all the Nordic and Baltic markets. We also even have 5G roaming between the Nordic countries, which I think we are pretty unique when it comes to. So 5G is live. It's still early stages. We're building as fast as we can, and it's actually going faster than when we built 4G, I would say. I come to build out status on the next slide. But first of all, I would like to talk a bit about the spectrum used for 5G, the frequency bands. So basically, this cake here, I stole it from T-Mobile. I think it's a very nice radio cake because it illustrates that you can run 5G on 3 different types of bands. So the top of the cake is what we call the high bands. And there you have high frequencies, which means high speeds, but low range. So the signal doesn't really reach very far, just a few hundred meters, and it doesn't penetrate walls very well. But it's good, for instance, for very dense city environments, and especially in Asia, big cities in Asia. On the bottom of the cake, you can see it's very broad, but it's thin, and that means you have really good coverage. You can reach several kilometers, but you don't get very high speeds. You get actually more or less 4G speeds, I would say. So the sweet spot here is the mid band. It is sometimes called C-band or 3.5 gigahertz, and that gives you really good speeds. It gives you gigabit speeds, and it gives you pretty good range as well. I mean, almost as good as 4G. So that is where we are building most of the 5G network in all of our countries, I would say. And it's the same thing for most operators in the world. The mid-band, 3.5 gigahertz. And finally, if you click once more, you'll see a very boring table of all the spectrum used in our Nordic and Baltic markets. You can study this afterwards if you're interested, but I've just highlighted that the mid-range, 3.4 to 3.8 gigahertz, that's where the action is. That's where we're putting all our efforts. And finally, I'd like to mention also then there is something called private spectrum coming out in some countries. So where an industry, an enterprise, a mine, for instance, can buy their own local spectrum independently of the mobile operators and have their own dedicated networks. So that is a new thing which has not existed previously, which is sort of interesting. Next slide, please. So I promised you to show the build-out status in Sweden, and this is the freshest news we have. It's 5G has now been deployed in 22 cities. This is, of course, changing more or less on a weekly basis, and this is fresh out of the information department. And the latest cities added, I think, are Skåne and Kalmar. And as you can see, I think many of you sit in Lund, so there is a 5G coverage in Lund. So I encourage you to go out and find good spots to measure 5G speeds. And basically, the plan is to have more than 90% Swedish population coverage by 2023. And that's very ambitious. I mean, 2023 is not that far away. So we are investing a lot in the 5G network in Sweden. We can move on. So let's get a bit boring, because we were told before the seminar that we should do some technical deep dives. I'll try to be very concise here, but I'll tell you a secret. 5G has actually not been deployed properly yet, because the 5G we have and all the other operators have is called 5G non-standalone. And what does that mean? It means it's sort of relying still on 4G. It relies on 4G for all the signaling traffic. So 5G is basically just speeding up the radio traffic right now. So you don't get all of these advantages like network slicing in the current 5G network. So 5G standalone, basically, what you should remember is the real 5G. And it has not been deployed yet by any operator, but it's of course coming real soon, because that gives us all the interesting capabilities of 5G, like network slicing, shorter response times, but lower latency, and also the possibility to do, I mean, network slicing is perhaps most important thing we get with real 5G. So 5G standalone is the real 5G, and that is still to be launched. We can move on. Oh, and as I said, network slicing is enabled by 5G. The virtual networks within the physical network, where we have different capabilities for different types of traffic. So the emergency call from the mine worker who has had an accident in the mine must have higher priority than his colleague who is watching Netflix on his coffee break, basically. So
exactly. I just want to say, Ivan, we need to speed up a little bit because we're not in time. Yeah,
I can understand that. So I will be very brief. This is the future, and it's a future as described by 3GPP, which is the International Standardization Organization. Ericsson is a very active member of that. So all kudos to Ericsson for making this a reality. We are currently on release 15. It's basically the first step of 5G. We will very soon have release 16, and there we will get better network slicing, so we can have more slices, basically better positioning, higher accuracy positioning. We will get better support for dedicated networks, which we will hear from Cybercom about in a minute. Basically, every release improves on the functionality of 5G. And as you can see, 4G fades away by like a couple of years from now, and then gradually sometime towards 2026 and 2028, we have a 6G coming up and 5G fading away. So 2030, we will have 6G in place, basically. These are the key takeaways. You can read them yourselves, but mainly, let's keep in mind that 5G is not mainly a consumer thing. Of course, your smartphones will have faster download speeds, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is about enabling smart societies and enterprises, which in turn will enable new use cases and business models. Quality, important. We can differentiate different types of traffic with different types of quality. and that is being realized through the concept of network slicing. And this is improving all the time with new releases from 3GPP. And finally, keep in mind, by 2023, we will have more than 90% population coverage. So it's going fast. It's going a lot faster than with 4G. That, I would say, are our key messages that you should keep in mind. And as I said, if there's one single word you should remember from this presentation, it's quality. 5G brings quality.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you. It's really interesting, and I think we do have some questions. I would, because I haven't got one particular in this at this time, but I would like to urge you that are looking at this to ask your questions in the chat later on, so we can have a fruitful discussion. It's so interesting to listen to, and I've been working with digital meetings for a year now. I think this is very, very welcome to actually secure and as you said, Ivan, just to have that possibility to, you know, where it's most needed with a safe connection and fast connection. I think it sounds great. Maybe Netflix is not the priority all the time, even though you kind of get upset. Okay, we do have one question. I actually... Oh, okay, here we go. How will 5G affect the granularity in positioning for devices like smartphones, wearables in urban, suburban, and remote places?
That is a really good question. It will improve on the granularity of positioning. So each 3GPP release of 5G will bring additional accuracy. So you will move down from, you know, 100 meters to 10 meters to 1 meter. But 5G doesn't do all of that by itself. There is also something called GNSS RTK, where you use GPS together with 5G to get really accurate positioning, like down to centimeter level. Also, it depends on how many cells basically you have and how dense the cells are. So in the rural areas, I think you have to rely on this GPS assisted positioning. But if you have, for instance, a city center area with lots of cells, you can get down to extremely good levels of positioning using only the 5G network. So yes, this will improve.
Okay. I just want to say and point out that it's really good to businesses to think about what positioning can actually bring to their own core business. And that is something we see a lot now in new use cases, where we can have their core business and with the possibility of positioning. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
So thank you. I have one additional question. We actually have more, but I will keep them for later. But I have one particular to you, and it's to know what kind of load traffic that Telia that you see will emerge to take advantage of the 5G capacity.
What types of traffic, was that the question?
Yeah, it says in the question, it says what kind of loads or traffic that you will see emerge to take advantage of the 5G capacity.
Oh, it's a pretty open question, I guess, but one of the most important traffic types that will emerge, which has not been supported that well in previous technology or generations, is video. Video will become extremely important. And now I'm not talking about Netflix. I'm actually talking about uplink video from remotely controlled cars, from remotely controlled drill rigs, all kinds of machinery where you need to have remote control. You need a good video uplink signal, and it has to be high quality and it has to be real time. So I think that is one of the most important traffic types which will explode in 5G. It's high quality uplink video.
Great. I think what we will do, thank you so much. And I hope that this gave a bit of an answer to that question from Martin Backlund. And we will maybe be able to get back to that a little bit deeper. I will thank you again for now. You will be back in the Q&A session a little bit later, but we would like to proceed to our next speaker, who will talk a little bit more about how IT and telecom merges with the help of 5G, cloud platforms and mobile edges. And so please welcome Andreas Schön, a consulting unit manager and cloud business and advisory at Cybercom, on the topic 5G. How do we make it happen? The screen is yours.
Thank you. So let's see here. I will share my screen. Share a screen. There we go. So the most asked questions. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. All right. It started in the end. Interesting.
Yeah, that's
all
an
right,
interesting way to start.
Well, all right. Thanks. My name is Andreas Schön. I'm a consultant unit manager at Cybercom for cloud and advisory. So we have been in the business for, well, the IT business somehow the whole my life. I've been 7 years at Sony Ericsson, Sony Mobile Communications. So, but I come more from the service side of it. So yeah, so let's dive deep into it. I will try to be short and crisp. So before we said software is eating the world, Mark Andreessen said that in 2011. And I think it was very true then, but I think that we can restate that now in the new world. And we can say that cloud platforms are eating the world. So what we are seeing here is that is a huge innovation power in the cloud platforms. Before it was more of infrastructure, hosting, that kind of thing. But now we see that the platform layer, the application layer are expanding and growing in an enormous pace. So what you actually can see here is that it's no longer access to infrastructure, it's actually access to advanced technology that you get with one click. So, and we see that the IT and the cloud platforms and the telecom business is merging. Yes, we have said that before, but I think it's time to restate it and say that I think it will be an accelerated growth going forward. So what we see here, the intersection here is the edge computing that actually brings the whole of the power of the cloud platforms out to the edge. And together with 5G, you create new use cases. So why is edge computing important then? Well, if you look at the promise of 5G, as we heard before, it's the bandwidth, the number of connections, and the latency. And I think the edge computing remedies the latency primarily. Because you can see here is that why is then latency important? Yeah, the machines will go 20 milliseconds to 1 to 5 as we had before, but humans have a reaction time of 200 milliseconds. So it's real time, we can say. But the main scenarios we see here is that you have the 5G connection to your device, and you can have 5 milliseconds. But what happens after that? If you connect that device to your cloud service, we don't really know today, and the quality of service can't be guaranteed as it is today. So what we must look at is how do we actually solve this in the long run? And that is that we put the mobile edge computing into the network. So you actually get the cloud closer to you, closer to the use case, so we can guarantee the low latency from the device to the cloud and back, so you can control it. But also, as we heard in the rollout plans, we are not really there today. So what will happen in the meantime is that the private network and edge, that will be a really interesting use case. And we see that is popping up on many places. So what you do there is that you set up your private network in a spot, and then you connect the cloud to that spot with help of technology. So you can actually create the use cases here. So what we're doing here at Cybercom at the moment is that we are actually working on that use case as we speak. So what we do here is that we are looking at the connected port, and then we will place an AWS outpost in that area. So when you set up your devices and communicate, then you communicate directly to AWS outposts. And there you have all the functionality as you have in the cloud, but normally it goes up to region Stockholm and then it goes back again. So if you want to control a drone, for example, it might be too high latency. But now we can actually control it directly on the spot with help of your AWS Outpost. But it's also interesting because what you also can get is that they have the whole functionality with, for example, AWS SageMaker. And AWS SageMaker is their platform for AI ML use cases. And also what's also interesting with these cloud platforms is that they are accelerating very high, and they, for example, they have made some sort of devices that you can glue upon your machine that controls the vibrations and the temperature. And then you connect it to your AWS, and then you can actually do local machine learning use cases on the spot. And also, for example, we talked about camera surveillance before. They also have this device you can connect to your cameras, and that connects directly to SageMaker, and you can do analysis within this network, local network. So I think that this solves quite a lot of the use cases. You got low latency, you get high data flow, you can connect many units, but you also have this secure and regulatory compliant solution that you can set up. So this is what we see will happen the coming years before we actually can merge over to the public, where we have the connections. So what's happened here is that we see that we are right now on a custom built phase. We still need to put a lot of effort into make it set up. It's still a POC phase where we'll try to understand and learn, but we are quite rapidly moving up to productification and servitization of it. So what we can see quite soon is coming, like edge computing as a service or private network as a service together with the edge computing. And what we see here, what we need to have is the low customization, out-of-the-box solutions. And today we already see this happening in the United States, where AWS together with Verizon are packaging this. So you actually can go into your AWS console and click and set this up and get it running. This is really, really interesting. We need to have a transparent pricing model. We need to understand the pricing of it. It needs to be cost efficient, of course. We need to have an established partner ecosystem that actually can help companies to set it up from alpha to omega. High security, and of course, I said before, compliance to laws and data regulations. So we are moving up this ladder now to products and servitization. So this is really interesting. And then, as we talked about before, we have more enablers. We have the slicing and programmability. I don't think we talked about programmability before. But what would happen with that is that you will have a new ecosystem. So I started at Sony Mobile actually in 2007 when this happened, when the iPhone came out. And this changed the market. So you have the mobile phone, you have the APIs that was exposed to developers, and then you had App Store as you as a consumer can go in and buy. We see the same analogy now in the telecom business. So with the help of the 5G networks, you can expose the APIs. You will see the service provider or aggregators of APIs. We believe that the cloud platforms will take a very active part and take a role in this. So as I said before, you will be able to go into the cloud console, and then you will be able to connect your services that you have with the APIs that are exposed from the 5G networks. And this really opens up a host of new, very exciting use cases. So yes, this is I would say that there are a lot of use cases we're talking about today, but as we talked about before, with the analogy of the mobile phones, I think there are quite a lot of use cases that we don't really imagine right now that we know will come. So I think it's will go beyond what we can expect or think about right now, as it did with the mobile phones. It will change the market. But we really hope also from our side, from Cybercom side, that we actually can do something good with it. And I'm really pleased to hear with the energy efficiency, for example, that we can use these services to create the more sustainable future that we need to live in. And I really also think that AI services combined with 5G can also be a very powerful cloud to reduce the consumption of energy and renewable sources. So, short about Cybercom. We do product and service development. We are into the cloud, sustainability, business design, IT security, and all these components are very important to get the whole story to work with. We've been in the software in the industry since 1G, and now we are in 5G. So this is, yeah, how we can help you. So that was my share today. I think you're muted, Yasmin.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I was so into what you were saying, so we've kind of forgot the sound. But it was really interesting. And again, please ask your questions in the chat. I would like to, could you please just elaborate a little bit on the dream scenario where actually 5G could have a role in the future? You mentioned the sustainability issue, which I think, I mean, that's where you got me. But where else do you see this could be where we don't maybe have that on top of our minds in the future scenario in business models or whatever you have?
That's a very hard question.
I know, I understand. That's why I'm asking you.
No, but I mean, I think my bet is that the coming together with the cloud services and the 5G will really open up, and it also will make it so much easier for all the companies that actually it will not that be complicated. So it will be an enabler for many companies that don't have the resources to go into R&D into this area. So I think that, take the analogy again with the mobile phones. This will democratize the development and the usage of 5Gs. So I think that there will be many small use cases and many small companies that can actually take advantage of all this. Before, it was reserved for the big companies with the big resources, but it will open up to everybody to actually to build on this. So yes, I'm not answering your questions about the use cases. I know that, but still, it's no, but I would say it will become so many possibilities.
But I think it opens up maybe the minds and maybe all of you that are looking at this to actually broaden the ideas where it could be used and actually take advantage of this, because I love the way you are describing it, making it more brighter and democratic future maybe. But I would like to bring you all on again. So please, Ivan and Terese and Johan as well, to be part of this discussion. And again, please ask questions in the chat so we can raise them and have a fruitful discussion. But starting off a little bit back to what Ivan and Terese was talking about this slicing, where we are talking about the network slicing and how it will be democratic? How will this can this be in conflict with net neutrality and of course democracy in a way? So maybe Ivan and Terese, would you like to start answering what you think about that?
Yeah, I can just give a very brief answer. It's a complicated issue because it's about regulation, and EU has spent a lot of effort on outlining regulation, but it doesn't really help all that much, because some of what EU laws or directives are saying is in conflict with each other. Because on one hand, EU says that operators should provide reasonable traffic management. So that's basically transparent, non-discriminatory and proportionate traffic management measures. So basically not slowing down, blocking traffic for ordinary internet users. So that's the first part. We're expected to treat people with sort of reasonable efforts. But the other thing is that EU are identifying something called specialized services. And those are services which are optimized for particular usages. And they give some examples like voice, I mean, ordinary voice calls, broadcasting IPTV, real-time health services, remote surgery is one example, new types of machine-to-machine communications. And those specialized services don't have to behave in the same way as the ordinary internet access. So there is a conflict built in here between saying that, yes, everyone should be treated, all traffic should be treated equally, but there are new use cases which require specialized treatment in order for them to work, because otherwise we will get interference. The radio spectrum is a limited natural resource. We don't have infinite amounts of it, and sometimes we have to prioritize. That is just the way it is. But if you look at the regulation, it's in conflict. So I think this is a moving target, and we will just have to see what happens on the market.
And that it's really interesting also to know who will prioritize. I mean,
yeah,
will
and
make those...
the regulators will have their say. They will, of course, tell us operators if we are doing something which is unacceptable. But I think it's up to us as operators to show the importance of distinguishing between different types of traffic, critical traffic and non-critical traffic.
Do you want to comment on this, Andreas or Johan or Therese more? Otherwise, we will just proceed, because the other question that I'm interested in knowing is a little bit about we were talking about the mobile operators, and is there a role for the mobile operators if companies get their own spectrum licenses?
So the short answer to that question is yes, of course. And we also see a role, of course, for system integrators like Cybercom. No issue there. But we as mobile operators, we're really, really good at radio network planning, dimensioning, building networks, testing them, testing devices, running the networks, operations and maintenance. We've done that for, many, many years. And these are not core capabilities for enterprises. It's hard to imagine that IKEA should invest in the radio network planning team. I mean, I don't see that happening. So,
Andreas,
yes.
do you want to comment on
that? No, I fully agree. I fully agree with Ivan. I don't really see it happening either. But I think that the changes will be on the next level. If historically the telecom companies already always try to find a position on how to monetize and not become a dumb pipe. And I think it's there where the battle will be. And I think the cloud providers will take an interesting position there. How it will play out exactly, I don't know. But it will be interesting to see how these different parties, and it can come in new parties, using the APIs and aggregate them and build services upon it. So I think that it opens up, and the future will be very interesting to follow.
Yeah. Definitely.
I have to agree with that. There will be new players, and we already see the hyperscalers entering this market. So yes, new competition, but competition is good for the market.
Johan, I know that you have some interesting questions to ask.
Yeah, actually, I have. I can start with one thing that is we have worked a bit on in smart public spaces project, and we have worked with NB-IoT together with actually Telia, who use the net. And that NB-IoT, for those that doesn't know what it is, it's a for very small packages. It actually was meant for introducing 5G, but it was introduced already in 4G to compete with nets like LoRa network and so on. But the thing is that what was introduced in NB-IoT, narrowband IoT, is that the package size could be improved further for even more energy efficient sensors. So when do we see this new NB-IoT system up and working?
Yeah, so narrowband IoT is still actually only part of 4G. It's not included into the current release of 5G, release 15. So it's not until we have release 16, which is coming maybe next year, that narrowband IoT will become sort of integrated part of 5G. And then you will get new capabilities, better performance, better battery life, and so on and so forth. So narrowband IoT, still on 4G, will come in 5G like next year or so.
Okay. So I think maybe we are getting to the end of this webinar. Do you have an additional question? So it's time for you to ask it now. Otherwise, I think maybe you will have one additional question to the speakers. Just a lot of thoughts in your head.
Yeah, a lot of thoughts. I just trying to digest all the discussions already about how to create a new business model. But the thing is that how do we start? And so on. And that is a lot of discussion, where to start. And they always say that we need to start with use cases. And we have had some discussions, both Cybercom and Telia, about trying to find what is the use case that we will build business on. And it's not easy to find them, since those use cases we keep in mind that those use cases need to use the 5G and not 4G. I mean, if we can use it in 4G, then it's not a good example, I believe. And then we're looking into how can we do this in private network, and how can we do this to grow the business. I mean, we don't want to do a local activity. If we make a local business product of this with one base station or network station or whatever you can call it, it's not the same. It's everything included. It's not just a base station now. It's you have the ABS and that kind of stuff as well when it comes to. And you do that in local in one place, and then you would like to scale it. How do you do that? If you don't scale it, then there's no business. So that is a lot of discussions.
Yes.
But I mean, yeah, sorry, Andreas. No, but I can say just I work with a lot of use cases, and I think the creativity is the main point there to find them. But of course, you need to find the business model. So in the use case, you actually need to think about the business models as well, not just technology. It's really important that to do that in an early stage. Okay, how will this business grow, and how can we actually monetize it on a more larger scale? So I think it needs to be done really actually in the use cases as well. I don't know if that was the answer, but a comment still.
And also, I would say that lower the hurdles to get started and think about the end-to-end use case. So not only the first part of it. So I think that's what we need to learn, and that's what we need to work with. And personally, I'm a little bit. I see that markets like US and so on are accelerating this, and I think that we as a 5G country, we should be able to be very in the front lead of this. So I hope that it will happen quite a lot in this area the coming year.
And I think that was a very good final word from our speakers. I think you, Johan, and the Mobile Heights have a lot to take with you here, because it just opened up a whole world of possibilities, but obviously some challenges. And I think that's maybe if I just want to interpret your conclusions, Johan, is that this is something that you will take with you to Mobile Heights and discuss further with these great people that you've had here, but obviously all the rest of members of Mobile Heights.
Yes, we are not a Mobile Heights organization without you that is in this meeting, or all the members we have. So please contribute and come to me and talk about your ideas of 5G, and then we can see how it can be mapped in.
Yes. And actually with that, I want to thank you all, Andreas, Terese and Ivan, for joining us today and sharing your insights in this, and of course all of you that have participated. You have the possibility to go on and discuss this event and this subject at Mobile Heights. If you go into LinkedIn and just search for Mobile Heights, you can comment in the event for today, questions, remarks, comments, and so forth, and just continue this discussion. And if you do have any questions further on getting in contact with other members or with the speakers of today, or practically anyone, right, Molly? You can contact Molly at Mobile Heights, and she will definitely help you to get connected. So thank you again. Thank you for me. Have a great day. And thank you for this really interesting seminar for today.